Hello, everybody, one and all, and welcome to the LJL Spring 2021 Playoffs semi-finals between V3 Esports and Rascal Jester. I am Samuel Initialize Hapgood. I am joined on the analyst desk at the moment by the one and only Alexander Nymera. Hapgood. The Hapgood brothers are back in residence. And we have ourselves a series to be breaking down because only one of these teams can go on to fight the Titans awaiting them in the next match, namely Detonation Focus Me. Before we can get there, we have got to talk a little bit more about these two teams, haven't we, Nymera?
That we do. So we do have V3 today, and for those of you who might not have tuned in last week, why you might be thinking, why aren't Sengoku here? What happened? Because obviously they were the strongest team coming out of that lower bracket, right? Well, apparently they weren't. V3 took them to 5 games. Not only that, they took them apart in that 5th game. They won that series 3-2, and now coming up against Rascal Jesters, maybe they have another amount of fuel left in the tank to spur them on to finals.
Gotta hope. They certainly showed up. It was a 5-game series. It was a bloody series. It was very blue side focused series, which seems to have been the way of playoffs in general right now. But with all that said and done, they managed to pull it off. Hollow and Reiner on one side doing some fantastic work, and then Muujin also having a very strong series. But then we have also got to turn our eyes to Rascal Jesters, the number 2 team from the regular season. They got the one win over Detonation Focus Me, but in the other 3 games, they got a little dismantled. But in that series, the likes of Seoul was still popping off. Those Ezreal games from both AD carries on both sides looking real nasty for both teams.
So I didn't have the pleasure of casting that one, left that one to yourself and Mass Swan. But the thing which came out of that series to me just solidified, I think, our opinion. I'm not sure if you'd agree with this, that it feels like DFM just don't get beaten unless they're arrogant in a draft, unless they're being arrogant on the day. And the question for me is actually, between these two teams, particularly for those on the red side, because blue side has been so strong during these playoffs, do they have the firepower to bring it to a team like DFM if they're not being arrogant? That is such a key question, because if DFM, get to come in with blue side, and even if they do lose red side a couple of times in the finals, with that side choice, you need to be able to take a couple of games off them on their favored side.
I think there's something very true about that. These guys have got a lot of power in their squad. We know it's coming up. And also, for the Jesters, they want to go back and get some revenge, take their learnings from that best of 5 and what happened in that series. Get kind of suckered into drafting Ezreal on game 4, second pick on red side, and DFM just having a bit of a counter for you. You want to be able to come back and take those learnings out. But before you even get to talk about that, you still got to go through V3, who are kind of here, as we've said, as a little bit of a dark horse. At which point, I do think it is starting to dive into a little bit of what we think of V3's chances. They've improved throughout the tournament. It's not been a clean journey up. I believe both of their series thus far have been 5-game ones. They went to 5 games
Yes.
versus Hawks. They went to 5 games versus Sengoku Gaming. They have had some great strengths. They've also had some great flaws. But someone I do want to call out as having seriously stepped up is Reiner in that bot side. The support player was an MVP candidate, honestly, for us last summer. He had a fantastic time of it. It's been a bit more rough in spring. Yes, it's a new AD carry. Yes, it's not necessarily the same bot side focused play that we've necessarily seen out of V3 from last year. But all the same, Reiner really turned up when it counted against the likes of Gango and NT last week.
And, we say MVP candidate. Reiner dethroned Gang off of Detonation Focus Me as best support in our eyes. For the first time since, I don't know, maybe even Dara back in the day, one of the old Detonation/Rampage supports. But to him to take up that mantle as, again, a homegrown Japanese talent in a team which had come together at the very last possible opportunity to make their run towards Worlds, it was such an important thing. Just didn't quite get to that level for most of this split. And yeah, having Rel certainly helped. I kind of criticize Sengoku for giving Reiner Rel a lot more than I think they should have done, but still looked really good on stuff like the Nautilus, which was again one of their 2020 stronger picks too. So if Reiner comes in on form and, battling that 2v2 like they did, even against Gango and NT's Phelios Thresh lanes and stuff like that, I do think V3 have some fight in them.
Fair enough. But I suppose at this point, we also have to turn our eyes over to Rascal Jesters. Yes, they lost, and honestly, relatively convincingly, but they still had a little bit of bite to their bark. particularly, it has to be noted, in that bot lane. Sol and Secret still looked very dangerous and could definitely be another challenge again for the side of V3. Yes, they
I
stepped up
mean,
to Gango and NT, but Sol, in particular, having a killer series.
exactly. And I mean, I don't know about you. We haven't talked about this on podcast yet, and you should totally watch our podcast, by the way. We go into a lot of things very much in depth, and we do it very, very weekly. So that's the first plug of the day for that thing. But I would say that the bot lane of Rascal Jester are probably the best in the league. When you take into account that Kazu is maybe not the best 2v2 support, makes a couple of dumb all-ins. You've got Sol and Secret, though, who have been immaculate on that front. Heck, I actually think that Sol might be, MVP candidate for me. Utapon might be the best bot laner, but in terms of importance to their team, it feels like Sol has just been bearing so much weight for this team, and he just continues to deliver huge performances. So yeah, coming into this game, there is a good chance that this is decided around bot lane pressure and that TV2.
A couple stats for you to back that up. Even in a losing series, still putting up
Yes,
506
stats, I
on
love them.
DPM. Still at about the second highest kill participation in the league at 83.7%. CS per minute of 9.7. That's in a loss. That's in a losing series. That's pretty impressive stuff, all things said and done. But of course, teams are more than just the one players, and we have got to look elsewhere as well. And at this point, I think it is worth taking a bit of a step back and talking a little bit about the different play styles. From what you have seen, Omera, what are you expecting playstyle wise out of both these teams? It seems to me that Rascal Jester have stayed a little bit more true to their kind of quirky jungle picks and hard bot lane carries, whereas V3 seem to have shifted back to a little bit more of a front to back playstyle from where they were at the end of the split, trying out some trickier comps.
Exactly, because I mean, when they beat the Hawks, it was again off of heavy engaged supports for Reiner, trying to get towards that particularly third and
Mm,
fourth dragon fights to really start turning things around. But how they beat Sengoku and how I think it could be really important for them to play today is to have a strong, winning mid jungle 2v2 with Ace also on a champion that can then just roam out, just leave his lane, just throw that to the winds, and go fly off to another lane. They do have players like Cog, which can do fine in tank versus tank matchups, does fine versus, most matchups in that top side, and we'll have to see the rookie Kanatu step up and take it to Cog.
mm.
But if you can get something like a Twisted Fate pick, something like a set mid roaming around the map, which is just having waves cleared continually and just getting out of there with Sunfire K completed, and just going towards that TV2, suddenly it's not that TV2, particularly if you've got someone like Hatchemetcha not picking the
Mm.
best bot-centric jungle picks, there is a real chance that Ace and then, of course, Mujin as well just head down
Mhm.
towards bot lane and after winning that mid lane, just upset this lane, which we have said as being so pivotal. And that's from the side of E3 anyway.
And then let's be real, we have seen some pretty strong stuff out of Muujin in their wins against Sengoku Gaming. When Muujin got ahead, it looked like the side of V3 were in a great position.
Mm,
Of course, if he wasn't quite so far ahead, the control over the map and therefore the bot side didn't look quite as strong, perhaps. So maybe something to
maybe not.
keep our eyes on in game as well. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a play-by-play. I suppose at this point as well, I suppose it's start worth asking. What are your predictions for this match, Nomara?
Oh, that's a hard one. So for me, and just going in because we got a bit of time. So let's just think, what would I base my predictions on? I mean, for me, a lot of it is about can you take games on red side? Can you actually win
Mm,
on that side? Because it feels like blue side with power picks has been dominant in the LJL. I think it's got something like a 70% playoffs win rate right now. Actually, might be
hmm
slightly less with the actually no, with the 5 game series between V3 and Sengoku. Only one game was won on red side, and that was the very last game by V3. I think on red side, you need to use your counter picks very well. I don't necessarily think V3 have been doing that as well as some other teams could do. I think
mm,
really only DFM does red side counter pick well because they have champion pools of players like Ebby and Arya to really make them use of it.
yeah.
Which means that Rascal Jester was side choice. They're either going to take this in 3 games or in 5 games. Actually, no, I'm going to completely lie. I'm going to say Rascal Jester 3-1.
I was going to join you on that 3-1. I think they've probably got it for me as well.
Yeah.
That said, it's not like V3 don't have their own options, and of course, over on the mainstream, they brought up some interesting team stats. Rascal Jess is very much with the higher DPM, #1 in the league actually for team DPM. Good dragon per game as well, about third in that front. Kills and assists, second at that front. Whereas you look over at V3, it's a little bit more coordinated. They've got a lot of first bloods, 16 of them. They are the best team in the league for that one, but they're also pretty heavily focused around things like the Herald, less focused around dragons. They do want to start snowballing through those lanes and getting the gold that way, which will be interesting to see whether that stylistic difference plays out to any serious advantage to one team or the other. Dragons for gold has always been a bit of an interesting trade for sure.
Not just getting well, that was remember back in the day when dragons gave you gold?
Gave you gold? Absolutely. That's a long time ago.
That was a
Season
time.
4 would have been the last
Yeah,
time. Season 5? When did the elemental drakes come in?
that would have
Season
been
7?
it was a little while ago because of course it was actually before the elemental ones. That was when we had like Dragon 5 giving you effectively huge amounts of damage.
Man.
Long may they live, those lizard conservationists. Remember kids, just remember to feed your local dragon.
Indeed.
But yeah, no, so obviously we've been bootlegging off of that main stream, so thank you very much for joining us in our endeavors to bring the LJL to the English-speaking world. And it is an early start for us, but I'm really looking forward to this series. And I know we've headed over a lot of these different matchups. We are yet to talk about this jungle matchup, though. So if we're going to dive into that one, and hopefully they'll bring us some stats on that, and we can kind of, again, kind of ping back over towards them. I think that Mujin was a player for a while in this split where I was sat there thinking, this guy could genuinely be MVP of this split. The first couple of weeks when we saw him, shadowing Cog and protecting him from the likes of Renex and Talir in its heyday when we were towards the start of that split, and just by their pathing alone was so important. But as the split has gone on, that consistency has not really shown itself. Whereas for Hachimecha, he has been stellar the entire spring so far.
Yeah, no, he has. And it's also been around, let's be real, Hachimecha's also had a propensity for pulling out some odd picks. He's not necessarily permanently sort of like indexed into, like bought into going towards some of these heavier, what's the word? Fighting options, like farming options rather, so things like the Udyr, the Hecarim, haven't necessarily been his always go-to. Not that he doesn't play them, particularly the Udyr, but he has got things like the Skarner in his back pocket, like the Kayn in his back pocket.
I think Skarner is Hachimecha's most played champion ever from my memory, actually.
I don't think it's the most. It's up there, but it's not the
most.
Up there.
He's played a lot of it. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go have a look for it while you start monologuing. Still, go for it.
Exactly, and the point being that he's not always picked the ones that lead you with the biggest CS advantage. Not played necessarily straight towards the meta, but it has played towards what his team wants to do, and it has played towards skewing how the game is going to be played. Skarner inevitably forces things like QSSs, assuming you don't get so far ahead that he doesn't get to make with the Impale.
I was trolling. It's actually Trundle, and then his third most player, no, fourth, sorry, is that Skarner. I got a couple of other ones in the wheelhouse.
I wondered whether that was. I didn't think it was first. I think it was high up there, but I didn't think it was first. I mean, especially on the other side, though, Mujin is a little bit more of a prototypical jungler right now, Mary. Like, he has been a bit more on that sort of hard farming, hit all the Graves options and then still play Hecarim and Udyr and Lilia and the likes.
Yeah, and I think that, when you do have a player who has the individual skill to pull off those things, it again gives you that flexibility in draft, which can really turn things on a dime. The question is whether that's something you can use on red side, or if the power picks are just too damn strong. We know that Hecarim is going to be banned. You don't really give that over. In fact, the one game which Detonation focused me lost to Rascal Jester was when they gave over the Hecarim. You don't tend to do that kind of stuff, really, just because of the amount of power picks in that role right now, which means that you don't often leave jungle till later in draft, which means you don't often get to use your red side advantage if you have a larger champion pool in that point. If you do have a larger jungle champion pool, yes, you can maybe wait out the second round bans if you think you can get to that point and secure a power picks elsewhere, but you are going to lose a lot for that endeavor in my eyes.
Yeah, to back up some of your points on Mujin as well, he is currently the jungler with the highest DPM of any jungler in playoffs right now, up at 344. He is up there at the second highest damage percentage. He's third in KO participation, highest in GPM, second highest in CS per minute. Like, this guy's been on fire in the playoffs. At least statistically, he's definitely been hitting the right kind of numbers in terms of getting that farm and translating that into damage.
So, particularly the translating into damage is also very, very nice. One of my favorite stats is to talk about efficiency. When you talk about if you're giving this player gold, how likely are they to do damage with it? And you have different kind of archetypes, right? You have players which like Sneaky from Cloud9, typically a player which didn't get the most amount of resources, but would still
Mhm.
do ample damage with it. Efficient player, maybe not heading up towards the top of the DPM stats, but because they're just very good with a little amount of gold, still worthy of noting. Then you have players like Uzi, who get
Mhm.
everything and they do even more with
Everything.
it. So it's interesting to kind of characterize these players on there, because I think
Sure.
actually that, while stats don't lie, interpretations certainly can, but that's a pretty good one to base your stuff off of.
Indeed, and that efficiency is a big deal. And Mugen appears to be a little bit of a gold-hungry jungler, but he certainly seems to do pretty well with the investment. The likes of
Mm.
his Nidalee is still something to be feared, even in a meta that has gone more towards facilitating frontline junglers that, yes, are still farming. Hecarim, Udyr obviously come first in mind, but are still pretty high impact. He's still got a little bit of a side a side love for the things like Graves and Nidalee still. And you can understand why when he can pull out stats like that, even if they are a little riskier, I would say, in the current meta.
It does feel like Graves is not really being picked as much as it was at the start of the split, and,
Mm,
and I think that has really impacted some players like of course once on the side of Burning Core, unfortunately didn't make it towards playoffs. And I suppose speaking of other picks which started really falling off, it is stuff like that Syndra, which has been a pick of both Recap and Ace. It feels like it is less strong than it has been for most of this split. They just have those stats up on screen too. And since we haven't talked about that
they do.
matchup, do you want to head over to that one?
Indeed, I think it is worth talking about these guys. We've talked around a lot the rest of the map, particularly around bot lane, particularly around jungle. But this mid lane is going to be an interesting one. Recap has been a bit of a revelation, honestly, this split. He was retired. We didn't expect much of him coming back into formal play. And instead, he's been great. Things like scattering Kaisers out of their killer instinct consistently on Syndra comes to mind. Taking it to Arya on things like Zoe, he has been
Solo
absolutely
killed him.
incredible in the mid lane. Yeah, solo killed Arya. That takes some
Mm.
going.
Absolutely. So, and I mean, I look at these two players, very high kill participation, very important towards their teams. And again, that's why I think that actually, because it looks like Rascal Jester have been much more coordinated across, team compositions, how practiced they've been in the early game too. It does feel like V3, the way for them to not just capitulate in bot lane against maybe the best bot lane in the LJL, the way to not get ran through top side of Hachimetra's ganking for Kanatu too is to win a mid jungle 2v2 and then use
Mm,
that with V3's typical style, which they even had last year, even in summer, to win jungle mid jungle 2v2 and then spread power out from there, spread that pressure and see what you can do and be a bit more flexible on the map. Question is, do you have enough picks to do that? If stuff like your TF's banned away, stuff like, your Galio is in a bad
mm.
matchup, and can you do that versus the players, the caliber of Hachimetra and Recap?
Also got to call out a little bit here as leading up here as the host of the LJL OU today. A very happy birthday to Mugen as well, who has got his birthday today. Hell of a day to have it on your semi-finals, players. Is a big one. It would be a hell of a present if you do manage to win this one out. You can even have an after party tomorrow, of course. Could lead yourselves playing Puddle's pity party if you don't end up with the win today. But you've got to hope the birthday buff comes through.
That's the one. One of those. It doesn't show up on your toolbar, but it'll show up on your I don't know on your personal details.
That's
But
true.
like I was saying, no, Mugen had an absolute stellar first half of the split,
Mhm.
and it did seem versus Sengoku, the early jungle lead tended to win the game. Didn't actually work out that way in game 5, so got to do a shout out to V3 to kind of hold down Crash, who started weakly this split, but of course towards the back end of it did have a strong performance themselves. And now
Mhm.
Mugen, again, versus Hachimetra. I think that these two are really going to be fun to watch. And they're not quite the same kind of players. You're right. They do tend to go towards different champions and support the map in different ways. But, it's all the more interesting to see how they problem solve against each other now.
And again, I know I'm the host here, but this is something I do want to kind of rant on a little bit here. Is I'm expecting both of these players to have something cooked up. Like Rascal V3 have obviously revealed quite a few
Good. I didn't
cards
have
at this
breakfast.
point. Uh, uh, Very good. But, actually, Rascal Jesters haven't had to show a lot. They had 4 games versus DFM where they had a particular style in mind that didn't work out necessarily quite as much as they would like. But I am
Mm.
nearly guaranteeing they have some more weird stuff up their pockets. And I'd be very surprised if V3 didn't have 1 or 2 things, particularly, say,
But
for Cog in that top lane, available. So I'm wondering whether we do start to see some of those weird jungle picks for Hachimecha looking to try and put Mujin in a difficult position. Maybe this is a world where we see a return to the Kane.
is it enough to last a best of 5? That's the thing for me. Is it
That
enough
is a
where you
question,
just pull
absolutely.
out in game 1, the adaptation comes through, and it doesn't matter from that point? What we saw from V3 is, again, all important adaptation versus Sengoku, and they
Mm.
nullified their strongest strength of this dominant 2v2 that they had in Gango and NT. And suddenly, when, they did have a TF that was continually hovering around bot side, things got very, very difficult. We're actually straight into pick and ban, Sam. Let's get into it.
That is a good point to end up on there. Nymera's potential fears about where adaptation leaves Rascal Jesters, even if we are giving them the edge in this matchup. But without further ado, I bid you welcome to Picks and Bans, ladies and gents, for, of course, our spring semi-finals. Rascal Jesters will find themselves on the blue side first time out, and of
Surprise,
course,
surprise.
V3 Esports will be over on the red. Indeed, surprise, surprise, blue side has been so potent over the last few weeks. Bans have already come through. It is the Rel thank you away from Reiner alongside the Tristana, which is a flex, of course, and the Galio from Ace. Other side, Senna, yeah, don't give Sol that. Thresh, again, so facilitating for those bot lane picks. And finally, the Udyr, which has been a
Wait, Hecarim
Hachimecha
got through?
go-to, but it does leave Hecarim up.
Okay.
And that is the first pick straight out from Rascal Jester.
So much to talk about from these first picks and bans already.
Whew.
It's not even going to be the Seraphine picked up early for V3, but it wasn't picked up early versus Sengoku in that series either. V3 banned that pick even on blue side. Yes, they do play it every so often, but it isn't really the kind of pick which V3 like to go around. Because Seraphine is not really that, that locus of power in the mid lane early on. It's something which is more like a control tower for those team fights, which is not really what Ace has been used to playing on this roster so far, though. Actually, it's going to be immediately replied to with the time catch. This either means for me it's either Varus or, well, I mean, Senna's already banned, so then I'm thinking, okay, Jinx is locked in. Do you want to bully that about in lane? Why has the time catch been locked in so early?
Because I suspect the Thresh has been banned, and Tahm Kench is the last real pick that offers incredible safety for Jinx. There aren't that many other champions that pair up super well with Jinx to keep her alive. I suppose you go very aggressive for something like the Alistair. Instead, they'll lock in the Orianna for recap. It does empower the Hecarim very well, and we'll see what V3 want to go towards. They're hovering the Akali, but that I think might be a little bit of a surprise. Throwback to
Oh,
Ace, spamming that in solo queue at Worlds, but never pulling it out, of course. Instead, they'll go towards the Braum, which is a little bit lower down the tier list, I would imagine, but is going to try and keep the Jinx safe best he can.
right, so I know I'm not Kangas. I know I don't have that beautiful facial hair and lack of
Very
head
few
hair, but
people are.
stand behind Brom. Got that one last defensive support pick left in that tank pool for Hollow and Reiner, and now actually this is something which can win out against Tahm Kench, because you walk forward with that passive, and then things go really badly for you, because the Brawl actually has a lot of damage nowadays, and you can lock up this Tahm Kench if they kind of get just a little bit out of position. So something for Hollow and Reiner's play around, maybe.
And two of those 80 carries straight off the table, like no Varus, you mentioned that early, no Ezreal, which we saw last week out. They are two poke options, which can often be a little bit frustrating for Jinx, so they are just taken off the board immediately, which doesn't leave me to wonder what Soul will end up on, of course, on top of that. And on the other side, it's just those double AP jungler bans. Nedley and Lilia are the premier options. They are taken away. There is still potentially, I suppose, a Karthus.
Karthus, yeah.
That might be a little bold here. We see whether
Talia.
Mujin is prepped and ready for it.
So I
So
don't
I
think
suppose
Talia
that's
is good in this draft. There's no setup, but something like a Karthus could certainly come through, particularly when you already have the Braum kind of playing defensive duty. That's a pick. We'll talk about that in a bit. Just going back to the problems of playing something like a Karthus, though, you're into a Hecarim. A huge backline access. Yes, you can jump forward with jump to your carry with that Braum, have the Mega Gnar ult, playing blocker. But I do think playing against, the Hecarim Orianna combo with such rampant backline access is so dangerous to play something as squishy and as, immobile as that Karthus.
And instead, there'll be the LeBlanc, and Aphelios is the choice for Sol with that Tahm Kench. You'll be allowed to stay alive, but it's not necessarily the aggressive option that a Thresh would have been. We've seen a lot of Thresh into Jinx over the last few weeks, particularly versus V3, interestingly. The final pick now for Kinati. Riven would be an interesting one, very bold, and I'd be excited to see
Do
it,
it.
but alas, I suspect
Do it,
it's
you
just
coward.
a hover. I mean, it's still being hovered at this point. I'm
Uh,
just saying, okay, that's more like it. There's the Camille, which has been a Kanatu choice. He played into Ebby last week. He got the solo kill on it, but the response is immediate.
Okay.
Nocturne top. Oh, actually, Nocturne jungle. I apologize. It took me a second.
You see, the hilarious thing is I was like, oh, it's Nocturne mid, and I realized that LeBlanc was in the game, and the smoke and mirrors had completely clouded my judgment. So, bit of an unorthodox 2v2. Aphelios Thresh is not something we've seen for a little while since Aphelios Thresh fallen off in priority. Normally is alongside that Thresh, as we so often see. And yeah, is going to be that Nocturne, is a good way to shut down the likes of your long-range engage combos from, well, your Hecarim and your Camille. If Nocturne's about, they can just reply to that with their own ultimate and get involved in the fight. Problem is, Kanatu has been an absolute stalwart on this Camille. Playing against people like Ebby on their Nart is a pretty good hyperbolic time chamber to up your skills on that champion. He's been very confident on it. Now going into Cogcog's Nart has also been a point of power for V3 when they do get that pick. Question is now, can Kanatu win out in this matchup? It is meant to be a winning one, of course.
Probably a little bit more standard, I suspect, for the Jesters, with perhaps the exception of this Aphelios Tahm Kench in the bot side. Everything else feels unsurprising, honestly, in the current meta, whereas over for V3, yes, Nocturne has been rising a little bit in priority, but the Braum, the LeBlanc, definitely raising my eyebrows a little bit. Ace historically has been a good LeBlanc player, in fairness to him, but I will be interested to see how this one works out, because I suspect if things like the LeBlanc and the Nocturne don't get things rolling kind of between 6 and 9, it could get a little difficult for them.
That it could, because yes, Aphelios has the second lowest base magic resistance in the game, the lowest being Yumi, because that's not really a champion. But what this means is that, if you have to take armor runes to go into that 2v2. If LeBlanc does get ahead, and Aphelios must be watching their back. At least they have a Tahm Kench to somewhat do that for them, though.
Indeed they do, and that will be the key, right? You've got 2 immobile carries in an Orianna and, of course, that of Aphelios, and only 1 Devour. So if people ever end up separated from the Tahm Kench, or he's caught in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with which carry to devour, there are some options here for V3 Esports, even if their engage is a little bit, not a little bit CC light, right? Like, they can definitely get to people with a Nocturnal LeBlanc, but there's not that much CC outside of, say, a good stack of concussive blows or a great Meganar.
Exactly. I mean, I do just want to quickly talk about one of these things which has happened more and more at level 1, particularly with V3 in the last series. You'll notice this. Look at those wards on the sidelines, in the side lane brushes. This is because the likes of Reiner has definitely been a level 1 warder of that bot lane brush, and sometimes teams have come to punish them. So it's interesting to see how these teams are starting to adapt. Obviously, V3 went for a top lane ward early. Hasn't led to anything right now, though.
Indeed, and some auto trading in the mid lane there. It was a distortion, and then there was a command attack, and then there was just a lot of auto attacks back and forth, and that'll be a corrupting charge popped from both of those guys. But that's the reason they picked the item, so they could do that kind of thing, and so nothing super crazy to behold. Hachimecha going for the double start there with the Gromp and the Blue, but it will be, of course, leashless, so smites away early. On the other side, though, Muujin, again, going for that leashless start on the same side. They're both looking to be around that bot lane pretty early on in this game.
There they are. So I was just sorting out some stuff on the back end of our stream right there.
Indeed.
And but yeah, as you see, early bot lane priority, it has been picked up by Aphelios. He's gone for the Doran's Blade, not gone for the Cult. Sometimes you'll see, much like Caitlyn has done in recent years, go towards the Cull and the Cut Down room, because you're not going to start with any extra HP from a Doran's item. That means you get the extra, get the extra damage in lane, particularly against your counterpart in the AD carry, which probably is going to go in that Doran's item. Instead, probably going for something more like the Last Stand, or maybe even the coup de grace. I think actually you're more likely to go for the Last Stand, just because Aphelios' turnaround with the likes of Serum, and you are being dove on repeatedly, does get a lot of value out.
I suspect you might need to be ready for a few last stands in this game, assuming Nocturne and LeBlanc become anything resembling
Doesn't
a
that
mild
make
threat.
it not Last Stand then? Although they might have one soon, because they're running forwards.
Indeed, Mugen is also going to be down here. Flash in from Miner to start getting those stacks up. The Devour is there, but Secret has only got one of those. He's got an exhaust himself. The Fear Tether is broken, but now Tom Kench is in a difficult position. Throws out his own exhaust, but I don't think it's going to be enough. And Secret goes down for first blood to Mugen. Didn't go for the full clear. 3 camps into roaming straight bot, and Hatchimetra wasn't quite there in time.
And Reiner has the setup. Concussive blows make things awkward, and now actually with the autos coming through, Sol's in a bit of trouble. Hatchimetra's here.
Now. Yeah, Hachimetra is here, but now they've got to be very wary. Hollow's going to get in trouble. He gets shoved into tower. There's concussive blows coming, but I don't think it's going to be enough. The moonshot is flashed away from, but that'll be Reiner about to fall as well. The shield comes up, and the Duskbringer, I believe, comes out to stop any further chase on. Summoners all burnt now from V3, and they're now going to have to back out a little earlier than they were.
A close run stuff. Luckily, of course, Reiner has the Unbreakable to block out 1 instance of damage, which comes in very, very important. Do you have the mid laners fighting early, but not leading to anything so far? They're not interrupting these junglers in their pathing around the map. Gonna go back to that replay. What happens? It's Braum getting that last minion to hop towards. Sees that Sol maybe out of position. Well, you know, with a flash Q, what can you do? What you can do is rely on your Tahm Kench to, as we were saying right the way from the start of the game, to just watch your back. I think as though Tahm Kench is still a little out of sorts. No longer do you get the speed up that you used to get from devouring an ally. No longer can you flash after you've devoured an ally. It means that there is just not quite enough mobility for the Rascal Jester bot lane to make it out of there.
And pretty much every summoner burned to do so from V3. That's double summoners from Hollow, Reiner, and of course the flash from Mugen on top of it to make sure you try and got something resembling a Fear Tether. So definitely a hefty cost to their early gold and early first blood, but it does get them the advantage. It's the kill onto Mugen, which is always nice on a Nocturne early on. But it's not over yet. It's not done yet. Cog finds himself on the receiving end of a hook shot, which is always a bit rough, but
doesn't get the
QC.
QC.
Look for that turnaround damage.
Yeah, so Kanatu, obviously, he solo killed Ebby in this matchup, and that's Ebby's now one of the most famed players in the LJL. Heck, maybe even the most famed one outside of course, that all-famous emperor of the Heimerdinger picks in general of Seros. And Kanatu losing out in this matchup right now, not due to jungle pressure, right, well, from the early trades. Cog managing the matchup well. As it stands, though. And V3, happy with both sides of the map, I think.
Yeah, I think they're feeling okay right now. Bit of a discrepancy in mid, I suppose, and a bit of a discrepancy in jungle, but the kill over, of course, to Mugen will alleviate that somewhat. That's the cost you take for ignoring a quarter of your jungle, or a quarter of the jungle, to turn up bot nice and early to cause some chaos. But that's now level 6 for Hatchimetra, it's level 6 for Recap, it's level 6 for Kinatu. Those big ticket ultimates are now online. Mugen still a camp or 2 away from getting that himself, but he is back down bot, taking out some of these wards.
He is. So, Mugen, not quite at that level 6 themselves. Question for me now is to watch those mid laners resets, because Orianna, with the Merc Treads, happy to brawl out with LeBlanc, happy to start clearing out waves against that champion and shove them under tower, which means that often the way that Ace will be getting out onto that is by clever resets, rather than just clearing those waves as you would do, again, with most of his champion pool. Thing is, LeBlanc has been out of meta for quite a while, but it was one of Ace's best champions. It does give you a lot of agency. It gives you that individual assassination and target power, target accident. Yeah, and what that means is that, you know, Ace should hopefully be able to get out across this map on this pick, which has not had so much practice against it this split.
Indeed, and before we kind of go back to that point, I just want to note, of course, the jungle pathing did turn up on screen there, kind of illustrating exactly what we said earlier. Mugen, red side clears, and then runs straight bot to make sure he's around for that first blood, whereas Hatchimetra caught on Krugs and therefore not really able to come and help out in the way they would have liked.
Nope, not quite yet. Cog, once again, just using that hyper passive, getting those 3 hits as Right August so loves to put into the game, to out-trade the Camille. For now, we've yet to see turret plates go down. Half a minute until the Herald spawns. Maybe we'll get... I mean, this is the problem. You're probably not actually going to get yourself support roams right now towards that Herald. I mean, maybe we'll see Hollow and Reiner reset off of this wave. I just don't think they're in a position, nor do they really want to force anything, though. So I think that actually we're more likely to see, you know, a bit of a lackadaisical start around this Herald, bit slower paced. I think V3 will just use this winning Gnar matchup right now to hold the fort, and hopefully Mugen can take that further side of V3.
Okay, so we'll see how it all works out in practice, of course, but Nightmare tipping that Herald over to V3, which makes sense, considering they do prioritize the Heralds pretty heavily in their game, so it's much more of a Dragon focus for Rascal Jester. But either team here going to be setting up for that right now until literally as I speak of it, I watched Mujin hop over the wall on the mini-map over there, but Hachimecha is around bot and would likely be liking to play around this Jinx and Braum if he can. And speak of the devil, there he is. Well, a nightmare, not quite the devil, I suppose. That's Teemo in this game.
Infernal Nocturne, let's go. So the problem for Rascal Jester right there, because you think, okay, well, you know, they got the Orianna that can win out against the LeBlanc, and maybe you can all in with the Camille. Is that now you have to worry about the Nocturnal? Every time you go in, yes, it is just that first rank. Okay, Ace having a good trade in the mid lane.
Command Protect comes through, and that might force the reset from Recap, who has, of course, got his teleport, been holding on to that for a little bit, and you can see the item discrepancy with the Lost Chapter complete for Ace definitely showing through there in the early trades. Hachimecha will trade the Herald for the Dragon.
Jinx did just ult there, by the way.
Try to get a hold of the Dragon, did she? That's the old Jinx steal.
But Sam, Jinx is on the team whose jungler was on the Dragon. This is why I mean, you look at oh, you're actually. Okay.
I know it's early over here.
So you know what that is? I looked at Hecarim like swinging the Q around. I'm like, oh, that's just Nocturne passive right there. Because you know, I'm looking at some other things on the screen. I'm like, oh, you know what? I just thought that Jinx rocket went through her friendly champion. Haha, how funny is that? Turns out I'm living up to the meme where Nightmare just doesn't have eyes, unlike, of course, the Japanese cast. You have the caster literally called Eyes. Cog, it is, of course, very early in the day over here, but it is a series to get out of bed for, and one which, of course, these teams will be looking to put to bed and hopefully doing it in quick order, because, again, Rascal Jester have the side choice for this. If they can take this game, the advantage is absolutely with them, because, you know, the onus is on teams to take games off of the blue side teams and say, actually, you know, this side, which has had a 70% win rate this playoffs so far, it's not worth anything. Don't bother about it.
Nope.
And with that in mind, V3, with this early start, with 1,000 gold lead, with the first kill, with the draft, which does allow them to skirmish effectively, it's looking all right for them.
Of course, they do probably want to take a bit of a bigger lead than this. As we said, they need to get this Nocturne and the LeBlanc to the point where they can just delete people and not allow the turnaround to come through from a Hecarim, an Orianna, and a Felios. You know, the front to back from Rascal Jesters, if it doesn't fall too far behind, is pretty terrifying. That said, V3 are doing pretty well to be on course to do exactly that. This Nocturne got the Herald in infantry, would love to get it set down up here. Cog has been able to pressure out Kinatu pretty well, especially considering Hachimecha has been playing around the bot side.
How good is Cog playing this matchup, though?
He's playing so well right now.
25 CS difference. Pushing in, did it early on without the jungle pressure. Now the jungle is there. Kinatu has to play so reserved. As it stands, Hachimecha is towards that bot side. Isn't spotted out by that ward just yet. Looks like V3 have still sniffed it out. And they are going to get away with just the one tower plate lost in that bot side.
And there's the Herald summon top. That'll be first turret over to V3.
Oh, this is
goes
horrible,
down
actually.
there. Cog gets that alongside Mujin. It is a bit rough for Kinatu. He's had to back away from his turret. Once or twice he'll play underneath it because he's not quite sure. And of course, yes.
Well, there's no turret to play underneath. It's gone. It's just completely gone.
It's just dead. Gets a second charge off as well. Great.
Doesn't even get to get the last hit onto the Herald, who doesn't even get the extra 25 gold for killing it. That is just insult to injury. V3, you can't do that. You can do this, though.
Here comes Nocturne, though. Flash away from Tom. Kenji's decided to be the target. Now Aphelios separated from his support. He's managing to get away pretty well. That onslaught did a lot of work. And here comes Hachimecha on the teleports. The turnaround is huge. Hollow's getting shoved back as well. And now both players of this bot side are going to get taken down. Kinatu gets one. Hachimecha's got the other. Mujin's in trouble as well. They're going to get a turnaround with Ace getting at least one back, but it's already a turnaround onto the Nocturne. Recap turns up as well. And Ace, it's only a clone. And it's a 3-for-1 in favor of Rascal just to absolutely shred the bot lane fight. Cog's clearly going to get in trouble as well. He does have an ult, but I think he's not getting that much for. He just goes down. And Hachimecha gets a storm out of as well. He's got a devour as well. That's not charging the light brigade. That is a full force cataphract charge. And Hachimecha gets himself another. Beautiful stuff from the Jesters in bot lane.
He just lowers the lance, eyes up his target, and absolutely tilts towards that bot side. V3 give over 4 kills in the extended fight. They start the play. They don't get to close down the Aphelios. Gonna have to see this replay coming through. He has himself the Severum. What does that mean? Lots of low range DPS coming in, but also the healing which comes out. Look at what he does here. Switches over to his Severum, and he comes through with what we like to call the emo plague, where it is not quite the Vladimir, but the healing is pretty much on par with it. Sol gets the Conqueror stacked up with the onslaught coming through. Sol doesn't get closed down. The DPS check is won handily by Rascal Jester after V3 failed to shut down the AD carry.
Yeah, they manage it so damn well, and then the dive continues. Hachimechi just waits it out, drops the aggro, gets in. Yes, he gets Nard, but he's still pretty tanky. He's still got to devour. Just follow up, and suddenly,
In fact,
look at that. The gold lead's all but gone for V3, and that's a lot of damage from the Hecarim nice and early
I was
on.
just thinking, like, oh man, what about Aphelios stacking Conqueror? And then you realize that Hecarim just exists. Doesn't really need to do much besides that. Comes through with a huge amount of damage for that early into the game. And now you've just given over a lot of assist gold to the side of Rascal Jester 2. Every single one of those kills was assisted. A lot of gold now to Sol. I'm actually not sure if he's probably is in fact going for the Domination Room secondary, because Aphelios does love the Omnivamp off of not just Taste of Blood for the healing on the one hit, but also the Ravenous Hunter. Very, very nice. And you've just given him 4 stacks of that. Aphelios in this fight, something to watch very closely.
Absolutely. He's feeling very pleased with that. It's not quite the mythic item, which of course you're looking at for the top 2 of both teams. Kinatu, Cog, Hachimecha, and Nocturne.
Oh, but he does have boots.
I don't know why I decided to go with Nocturne instead of Mujin for the last one. I just switched up my naming convention at the last moment there, but they're still available, of course. They're still going to start up the second dragon, and they're very ready to fight. Kinatu is waiting for Cog to come through. He's nearly at Meganar. Ace steps forward with the chains, but doesn't get as much as like. That's going to force the Meganar out of Cog, and backing away from the dragon now are Rascal Jesters, not wanting to play into this Gnar straight away. The sentry turrets come down, and Rascal Jester's still willing to fight for that. Hachimecha's got himself a devastating charge, ready and willing to go. There's the paranoia. It's taken out. Cog gets in. Big Gnar ult, but it doesn't get as much down as they would like. Hachimecha still dies, though. But now Kinatu stepping forward with the tactical sweep doesn't get as much as they'd like, and Rascal Jesters lose the man and lose the dragon. And don't respect the Gnar. Paranoia keeps them away alongside the Flame Chompers. Well played from V3.
Rascal Jester's just taking a little too much damage just tanking up that dragon. The Hachimecha, bit poked out, didn't really have the HP to fight around that dragon as well as they would like to. V3 capitalize. They take down the dragon after it's leashed by Rascal Jester. Do not allow Rascal Jester that extra angle into the fight. Even though there are the Aphelios turrets being put down, it's not nearly enough to dissuade V3 off the areas of the map that they want to. Particularly since those Aphelios changes, which did lower the range of those Crescendum turrets. It's not quite the same zone control that we saw the likes of Detonation Focus Me really use to great effect in 2020 spring. And they're not able to stop V3 evening up the dragons.
And there's your jungler proximities. A bit more even for Mujin, who has been all around the map, whereas for Hachimecha, he's been around his mid a little bit more than perhaps I'd kind of clocked, honestly, though that might be the fact that Recaps roamed a little, and a little bit more of that bot side focus as well. Whereas, as we said, for Mujin, that's a pretty egalitarian support for his team.
I mean, based off this, Hachimecha is now my favorite jungler, because as a mid laner myself, I like it when my jungler is there to bail me out against LeBlancs, which have 2 kills right now. Ace 2 and Mujin getting a rest on.
He's in trouble here. He does, however, have
no, he's not.
some headless to keep himself in trouble. I genuinely thought he'd be in a lot of danger there until, of course, Braum was around. Decided it wasn't
spell
safe
shields
enough.
are a thing. Puts down the
and
fear.
Spell
Ace
shields are a thing.
Oh, Ace has gone for the Everfrost, interestingly, on the LeBlanc. What this means is that you could actually get triple read. You can get your double chain into the Everfrost. He's going forward. And whoa, cancels the distort. No extra poke coming out into Kinatu. That could be quite important, because Kinatu was already at 2/3 HP. Ace still trading, but now we've got Nocturne ult.
That's the paranoia. I don't know how willing they'd be to go through on this. That's the paranoia not going to actually get as much as they would like. Hachimecha does get the eye as well. Only difficulty now is finding the way back to lanes without losing too much. V3 did roam up to contest. It's worth pointing out. Hachimecha might find himself rooted, but is still going to be able to walk out relatively scot-free. Over the wall goes Kinatu. He's pretty low, but does have a shield. He's still going to get in so much trouble. Seeker had to flash for the Devour and now flash out. Of course, I think the Jesters have just gone too deep. Down goes Camille. The Shockwave disengages a little, but there go the rest of the Jesters members trying to escape best they can. Mujin stepping forward with the stride. Breaker gets one of Felios in mid, at least trades one back, but that's a massive win for V3 on the other side of the fight. Hollow gets a double. And Rascal Jester just went for a fight that they didn't need to and get slapped.
Kanatu, buddy, why are you going over that wall there? That is completely unnecessary. Rascal Jester seems like they're losing a bit of the sense of the control in this game that they really need. They aren't actually that far behind. They shouldn't feel like they are forced to play around this right now. Yes, playing up against Yellow Blanc, who can hop over the walls, makes things a little awkward, but then you have to funnel into no vision at this point. Because the Jinx Chompers are down, you're not able to follow up with something like your Shockwave. Yeah, if Recap had the Shockwave onto Hollow there, maybe things go a little differently, but that's not what you're fighting around. Aphelios isn't in position either, would have had to flash in, does have the Chakrams, gets stunned by that Braum passive, at least gets ones back, but V3, they just kind of had that fight handed to them.
He did, and Kinatu gets exhausted as well by Reiner, who's very quick on the trigger there, so that the Q2, that precision protocol, doesn't hit as hard as Kinatu would like. Lots of stuff like that, and now there is a big gold lead for V3. We're up about 4,000 gold after that fight, after getting first turret. They've actually got 3 turrets, because they managed to get 2 in mid off that play, which is a stratospheric change in gold.
So, speaking of other changes, of course, this is a real change of form from Kinatu, and not quite so much from Cogcog. Cogcog up 40 CS in this matchup, up 2 levels. Kinatu dying a little bit awkwardly in that last fight. Feels like this rookie top laner, who is, the rookie of the split, no surprise there, given the standard of play from Kinatu throughout this split, has been struggling in this matchup, and Cogcog's playoffs so far have looked really good when he has been on that Gnar. And this is now going to be that question again of, well, no, there is no question, it's mid lane.
And they're going to dive in onto Aphelios, who's trying to save a life best he can. Spat out, stays alive, but of course goes down to Tom Kent. Big Mega Gnar, though! That was gorgeous Cog. Just, what was that? The Stride Breaker Gnar cracks the game open. It'll crack the inhibitor turret. They might even look to just finish it here.
Well, he's not just breaking, strides, he's breaking kneecaps and ankles too. Sol just cannot get away from the top laner of E3. This time the fight is post 20 minutes. It's going to be the Baron on the table, and I think it's just going to go.
And I was worried they wouldn't have the CC to back up the dive, and I just didn't need to be worried because they're absolutely murdering people. Cog is just too good. The last series we saw him pull this out, he manages to get a ridiculous Gnar in the Baron pit when things were looking dire for them versus the Hawks. It's not the first time. Rascal Jesters will at least try and get a hold of this Mountain Drake to get something back. They've Abyssal Voyaged in. Kinatu is here as well. So that is a small silver lining. I suppose more like a tin lining, really, because it's not really as valuable, that's for sure. And they're going to have to deal with a big-time Baron power push at the crest of the 20-minute mark.
And their hold on this game is about as flimsy as tin foil. This is justice, respect, pushing up that far. I know you want to get mid-priority. I know you think you're safe with something like the Tahm Kench, but when you have, your flash, your stride breaker, your ults on the Gnar, there is only one Devour, and it is not nearly enough when you have this backlane dive coming in so strong. Rascal Jester, if they were on the front foot, if they had the Hecarim, Orianna, Camille combo coming through, that'd be a different story. But they have to play defensively now, and given that Cogcog has come out to such a lead, Rascal Jesters are really struggling to protect Sol, even in that bot lane play where he looked so good. Well, I mean, that was a bit of an anomaly in this game.
A 96% chance to win, I think, is completely fair. There was a fair chance for Rascal Jester to win not that long ago, pretty much just before they picked up that Herald and it all went wrong. I just watched Herald die by the ruins of Rascal Jester's Tier 1 tower. That Herald, which they sacrificed about 2,000 gold to get a hold of, by the way, after going for that fight. It gets nothing, and that feels a little bit emblematic about how this game has gone. Rascal Jester's just not quite with it on some of these plays in this game. And V3 looking dangerous, looking poised, and playoffs V3 is a scary beast, it seems.
Oh, it does. And Ace, 5-0 and 2, the solo lanes of V3 have absolutely stepped up. It started in that bot lane. It started with Hollow and Reiner forcing out summoners, forcing out, kills too onto Sol and Secret. But V3 and their solo lanes have really made things work. Muujin using the platform to get involved early. And while Hatchemetcha did get those 2 kills and 2 assists early into the game, has really struggled to reprise that team fighting power of the Hecarim beyond that play.
And that's really true. I think that's the last good play we've seen out of Rascal Jesters. Hell, it might in some ways be the only good play we've seen out of Rascal Jesters this game in some ways, which is a little bit sad to say, of course. It's only one game in a series. It's only one game. This game's not even done, of course. There's still a world where things get turned around. Of course, an Oriana and an Aphelios
Stranger
that get
things have
time to be
happened.
turned around. It could definitely be dangerous, and they've got the ability to hold on with a lot of wave clear here as well. So they're going to see if they can survive the dive, which is a little easier said than done. That said, they are some of the champions that can manage it better than others, and they've got to do it though from about a 10,000 gold deficit, which is again a little easier said than done.
And this is exactly what LeBlanc has done. We haven't seen too much of it this split. Get vision, get poke, hop over walls, and just pin back the enemy team. As long as you just sat there with the amount of CDR that you have from a Cosmic Drive second, which, I mean, it's a lower damage build, it certainly gives you a lot more mobility and CC from even the extra chains coming through. Rascal Jester just have to pay so much respect to Ace right now.
I do indeed. 2 items at least on a fellow, so it's a second item, rapid fire cannon, which I think is just a way to maybe stay a little bit further back best you can. Hachimecha throws down the chilling smite onto Mugen, maybe thinking about going onto the knockdown. Of course, is much better going forward than he is going back, but takes a lot of damage for his trouble. And Kinatu as well also chunks
Oh, he's
out
caught
quite a long
out.
way, and Mugen's going to go straight in on that one. Does try and use the Hex Tech ultimatum to buy space and time, and does so pretty well. Mugen goes golden though with the stopwatch and tries to stay alive.
Oh, Sol.
Nearly a mega, gonna get so much trouble. Sol goes down. No Devour left. Hachimecha takes a zap as well, and that was unfortunate. They turn onto Kinati, but when he gets saved, they just focus fire the Aphelios. No QSS, no cleanse, no way out.
Had no flash for the next couple of seconds either. Rascal Jester almost find themselves something. They find a shockwave, but it's not enough to protect everyone. Chain lands onto Kinatu. V3 looking to close this out. They're pushing in for that second inhibitor. There's a wave on the bot side too. Going to choose to back off from the base right now. With a 10,000 gold lead, with double inhibitors, with the dragon coming up with not even that soul point threat from Rascal Jester, V3 have all the control they want in the first game in this series.
It's looking all but over. The fat lady might not be singing, but she's certainly warming up the vocal cords right now, and apparently it's going to be a big scream as in came Mugen onto Kinatu, who was a little bit separated from his squad.
I mean, the heals, the shields, it was very close, gets Kinatu out, but at what cost? Apparently it's at the cost of Sol getting sectioned off by the Braum ultimate. Has to backstep. It's a good backstep, but it doesn't take them to safety. It takes them far from it. And far from, well, not even that far from home. It's actually just in the base. A little too close to home, even. Rascal Jester find themselves losing another fight.
I've got to call out a horrible disaster there. Hachimecha got knocked up, which pushed his model over Sol's, which meant he got devoured and not the AD carry.
Oh gosh, that's why you click on your champion portraits, folks. If you're using Shen, if you're using everything else, it certainly helps. Rascal Jester, again, we can see their skill when they understand what they can do in their fight, when they start communicating very well. It's just not enough when you've got a 10,000 gold lead against the likes of a snowballing mid-jungle 2v2. Haha, guess which of us thought that would be important in the series. From this knockdown into LeBlanc, start at 2-1-8. 5-0-3. V3, they have so much engage range with this. Holding that, again, that sword above the head of Rascal Jester and say, wait for it to drop. It'll happen at some point. You have to play respectfully while we have our cooldowns available. And
Baron is started up again. There's all the items in the world for V3 right now. Check out Cog's infantry, for example. Looking pretty tasty there at the 3-item mark. And this Baron will fall pretty quickly. LeBlanc, interestingly as well, gone for the Cosmic Drive second, which, of course, is
was mentioning that.
Strong.
So it's not the Leandry's first for the extra CDR, but again, when you have something like the mythic passive of your Leandry's, giving you 5 ability haste per legendary item, doesn't actually give you that much into the mid game. It does help, of course, towards late game. You do have,
more like
extra
3-4 items,
extra 15, 20 ability haste. Yes, that's reasonable, but even then, you get diminishing returns from that. Cosmic Drive giving you a whole bulk of it for free. It is a good second item if you do want to get a load of it. And the Everfrost, again, allows you to pin people in place for your chains, for double chains and Everfrost. Things get really really good in terms of your ability to pin people in place for someone like Kogo, for someone like Mugen or the rest of your team to start team fighting around. It's less of a solo pick build, more of a team fight build.
And there, of course, is the CC that V3 were perhaps a little lacking innately in the Champions kits. Everfrost on LeBlanc does that for you. It's a little bit like the Ari, right? You can just hop forward and use your Everfrost as mobile CC, right?
No, just don't build Murmur. Just don't do it.
There's still a little rage that one. Recap survives the Everfrost coming at him in his own base there, but all the while, this Baron number 2 is forcing the siege onto the one remaining inhibitor turret. Reiner, Cog, and Hollow are the men beginning the siege down there, whereas it is Ace and Muujin who are empowering the minions in Rascal Jester's base.
They are empowering their team. Is that Nocturne ultimate? And they're going on Sol.
Paranoia's there, but they're not going to get as much down as they'd like. Hachimachi goes forward with the devastating charge to buy time. Sol's still going to have to try and flash away. Stays alive for now, but the inhibitor is dead. The chains are down. The shockwave is huge into the onslaughting shadows, but do they have the damage? They're just too far behind. Concord gets the Mega Nara in return, and they just can't get it. Even when the Wombo combo is as awesome as you would like, there just aren't the items. There just isn't the time, and the turnaround is there. V3 will secure game 1 in this semi-finals.
5-man Shockwave, 5-man Hecarim ultimate, and no one bloody dies! They just don't have the gold, they don't have the stats, and they don't have themselves a win on the board. Contrary to that, V3 walk away with game 1.
They absolutely do, and it is well deserved. It was a great early start. Muujin getting things rolling, and maybe Rascal Jester's got back into it. We saw what happened in that bot lane. We saw what they could do if they were playing from an even playing field, but then we started seeing some mess-ups around the Dragon. Then there was the Herald fight, and it all started to go really wrong from there.
And I mean, looking at the replay on the screen as well, I mean, just look at this. Absolutely beautiful.
It's
there's
so good.
I mean, just imagine if that was a Infernum. Even then, I don't think they're close enough for the extra splash damage to carry out from all members to all members. Sol just doesn't have the damage, and that's a really big part of this game. Sol, after early play, early 4 assists, maybe would have liked the kills themselves to start playing around that second dragon. Remember, that is, again, one of those first fights which really started kind of against the favor of Rascal Jester. They did play well around that early fight. We saw their skirmishing potential. They never really managed to reprise that performance.
Unfortunately, not for the Jesters fans out there, but V3 fans are ecstatic from kind of struggling.
It's happening again.
Down towards the end of the split. Here we are. They're in the semi-finals. They're a game up, but of course, we've got to break down this series on an analyst desk. We're going to take a moment or two to gather our own thoughts so we can come back and be a little bit more eloquent when we talk about this game. So stick around. We'll be back in a minute or two.